everybody. Thanks for hanging in there with us for the first week of our deep dive into blended learning. This week is week 2, and if I click into our blended learning folder, we are going to be tackling some planning this week. So in the week 2 folder, I have a blended learning planner that is a basically interactive notebook that will help you kind of plan a lesson or plan some structures that you might use for blended learning. And then there's a sample planner filled out. So let me just open this real quick. Each of you will have an assigned template through the Google Assignments, and we are going to look at this pop out here. Okay, so this planner uses some of the stuff on the side. So you'll want to make sure that you use this little magnifying glass to resize if you can't see things on the side. These here can be, if you wanted to use them just as a quick drop down to different sections, but these are the sections you're going to be doing. You're going to be writing a SMART goal, going over the standards and assessment you might use for your lesson. There are a couple of different kinds of lesson planners that you can choose from, and some to-dos, and then coaching, and a bit of a toolkit that I have for you. So the SMART goal is just that you'll type in these boxes a goal that you have that would be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely, and then any extra notes you want to share. And I do have some prompting questions here that might help you fill in that SMART goal. And this is just so Brian and I can get an idea of if you have something larger that you want to do later, and we would know to kind of check back in with you and maybe schedule some follow-up stuff during the year. The standards would be the standards for the lesson or the unit that you're working on. You could keep it as small as a lesson, or you could go as large as a unit. It's up to you. And then with this, you're going to pick a blended learning option. Each of these options are defined. You probably already understand the station rotation from some of the stuff that we looked at during week 1, whole group rotation, flipped classroom, individual rotation or playlist, flex model, and the enriched virtual learning might be something that's kind of new as far as terminology. So the individual rotation playlist is where students move through online and face-to-face learning on a personalized path. So that might be where they're using the Edmentum software or something like that, or maybe you've created a mastery playlist for them inside of Schoology, and it's very personal to their learning needs. This is kind of a more advanced method of blended learning because it really hits on what students individually need to be successful. The flex model, students rely heavily on online instruction, but they have a teacher on site to provide face-to-face support. This is, again, probably more of our remote learning almost, where students are working through Edmentum or the program the elementaries are using, which is escaping me at the moment. But they meet with a teacher to kind of go through that. And then the enriched virtual learning is all learning's online, but they have face-to-face sessions with their teacher. And those might be Teams model, like we might see flex model more in NTI. Those are just things to kind of think through. Okay, for your lesson planner, you have your choice of 4 different options. Completing slides 11 and 12. Slide 13, you could handwrite your lesson plan idea and take a picture and put it in, or you might create your own organizer. The lesson planner I have here basically follows the 5E structure of lesson planning, where you would write down a way to engage your students at the beginning of the unit or lesson plan. You would identify materials that you're going to curate for them to explore. This could be a textbook, it could be a podcast, it could be different videos. You are going to write down how they're going to explain or critically think about the material. So this might be specific note-taking strategies or practice that they're going to do. How might they create or collaborate? This is going to be challenging at a 6-foot distance, so we might focus on getting kids creating. And then how are we going to connect them in some way to the content? All right, the next planner I have here is it's actually based on a interactive planner that Catlin Tucker uses. And what you're going to do is you're just going to move the lesson pieces over onto the workspace and then type in. You might not use all of these strategies, okay? And that's all right. But you might then also, as you're moving them over, highlight or move up which part of the lesson plan they're doing. So if it's a create and collaboration activity, you would move that in. Or if it's an explore activity where they're exploring videos and textbooks and things like that, you might move that over. So this is just a little more tactile. And then you could also add your own if you wanted to. So in the sample lesson planner, I did 3 different examples. So here I filled in and explain like the 5 E's kind of thing. And then I also just dragged in, I did is dragging in, and this is all actually for this workshop that we're doing. And then the last one is actually how I planned it all, which is I used Post-it notes and just hand wrote all my notes on Post-it notes. And yeah, that's pretty ugly, but that's often how I plan PD. So whatever works for you is what I would hope that you would do. Okay. The next part of this is to think about visual cues and navigation that you're going to use. Are you going to have visual cues like I have over here that lets people know what part of the lesson that they're in? Are you going to use hyperlinks? Are you going to use a big stop button to tell them to meet with you? So what might those visual cues be? If you're in a face-to-face setting, you might also use auditory cues. So you might use music. You might use like the little buzzer or the timer on classroomscreen.com. There's all kinds of things you might do to let students know it's time to move to the next activity. What is your role going to be? Are you going to be circling through the room? Are you going to be conferencing with kids virtually in some way? Are you going to be at a station leading something happening? That's something we'll want to think through as far as masking and distancing and how. That's something we're going to think through as far as masking and distancing and the time that we should be with a small group. And there's just some things to kind of consider. And then how you might facilitate collaboration. We might try to get creative about this. And then digital tools and programs that you'll need. Okay, and then I do have like a task list, especially if you're working with a group. This is something you're going to want to type out, like what do you need to do to get this up and running? Who's going to be responsible? And when are you going to have that finished? And then there's a pause here for you to meet with Brian and I, and we will actually, as we're talking through things with you at your meeting, go through this rubric and just kind of decide how things are falling and if there's anything that we could do better, that sort of thing. And we may also fill this out ahead of time so that when we meet with you, it's a little more productive. So we'll see if we can get that happening. Some extra tools that I have for you to think through would be slides 18 and below. These are digital tools. You might think through, these are just some like really good easy ones that really give you like the most bang for your buck, I think. And then I also have different product ideas. If you're going to try to get kids creating, this is a pretty comprehensive list of things you might do in a unit. And another thing that I like to use is an assessment map. So if I'm doing a larger unit or planning a larger unit, I like to map out what the big standards are along with how I'm going to formatively assess those. Now, this is just a template. You can always delete boxes that you don't need because you probably aren't going to use 3 formative assessment for each knowledge. I have one specific to social studies too, because for social studies, we want to do that part where we have all of those social studies type lenses of thinking in one unit, and then a formative assessment for each of those kinds of standard things happening. And then there's one other product design, like are kids going to be developing individual products or team products? And so these are not You do not have to do these. These are just tools that I find helpful when helping people plan a unit. And if you're doing a larger unit, you might consider looking through these. So anyway, if you have questions, give Brian or I a shout, and we are happy to help.